of loss. Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good. Oh my gosh. Wait, what? Oh yeah. I'm having a little trouble with the transitions this morning. That's why we're a little bit late. But we just barely got retail sales. And as was kind of the whisper on the street, U.S. core retail sales was down pretty big negative spot 6% when they were expecting a positive spot 2. So that is definitely going to lead to some buying today. I still have this short on in the treasuries, and you can see that with my one contract, they have basically erased a whole handle worth of profits here. Now, for me, though, I'm kind of, well, I don't know. Tough call, but I think at some point I may want to add a second contract on if I think it's going to come back down, because I think how I'm going to try and manage this one. But I really want to try and hold this for a bit, so we'll see. Now, that's interesting. The initial spike, let's say it started at 09.5. It was a little bit below that, but it's coming all the way back, which is very, very interesting. Initial jobless claims was lower than expected, 212K versus 220. So that is also interesting. Hold on a second. Let's fix a couple of things here. GWE and treasuries jump up. Yeah. The retail sales number was not good. Okay. Negative spot 8 versus negative spot 2 expected, and core negative spot 6 versus spot 2 expected. So that's really bad. Let's come over to the charts. So here you can see the treasuries. They're not quite there, but they're trying to retrace the CPI move pretty hard. Here you have the S&P 500. S&P 500 struggling a little bit. They liked the retail sales being bad, which is funny, but they're doing okay. But you know, they're still right about the levels that they were before the CPI earlier in the week. There's oil. Oil had a big buildup from their numbers yesterday, so oil came down quite a bit yesterday. It was within the range, of course, but the demand for oil is just not there. And I think the biggest thing continues to be that China is just in deflation. It's just deflation over there in China. And yeah, that's really hurting oil. It's really hurting copper. We'll pull copper up here. Although copper is doing pretty good this morning. Gold and silver. Now, interestingly, even though the treasuries and the equities like almost completely retrace the CPI move, gold and silver are not. So they're maybe a little bit more concerned about the inflation, I guess. It's always funny because isn't gold supposed to be a hedge against inflation? But it hasn't been. The correlations are different this time around than they have been historically. Here we got the Japanese yen. Oh, now the yen is rising off of this, and the dollar's taking a pretty massive hit. So that's very curious. And then we got Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just pumping like its brains out, man. Look at that thing go. So it's there. I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so. I had so many discussions with people, especially on the Bitcoin subreddit. I quite enjoyed that subreddit. I do not like Bitcoin, but they were all like, haha, it's down after the ETFs are out. And I was like, I wouldn't make a big conclusion off of like the first few days from it. They give it a week or two because it's probably going to bring more inflows and probably going to support the price of Bitcoin. And sure enough, it has. So there you go. I should have put money on it. I thought about doing it, but I was like, no, I hate it. I'm not going to do it. So fast. Anyways, so that's where we're at. And they tried to start another move up there in the treasury, and it didn't go. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, actually. There must be a little bit more going on here, I think. Yeah, I think so. Let's come over to Zero Hedge. Maybe they have something. No. UK and Japan show markets go up, not down after technical recessions. Believe it or not, I've never touched crypto in any form, never commented, never even looked at it. Really? Well, I'm so jealous. I think that I've just been way too involved in it, you know? Like, and as far as I can see, like, it serves no value. It's a bad thing for society overall. But at this point, I'm kind of starting to think that there might not be any way to stop it. Like, there's enough pro crypto idiots in government and whatnot to keep this thing going. And I still very strongly believe that the price is supported / pumped up by Tether. And so if anybody ever catches up to Tether, it's just ridiculous that like all of the money in the crypto world is going through some tiny little entity in Barbados or wherever it is that they have it. If they didn't have Tether, or if Tether was exposed as the fraud that I'm almost certain that it is, I'm not sure that Bitcoin would be worth even $1,000. But I'm not sure if they're ever going to catch up to them. I'm kind of wondering if 50 years from now, and you're reading in the history books about Tether, and they'll say, oh, you know what? We might not have cryptocurrencies today if they had actually, exposed the Tether fraud. But then, they never found it and they never did anything about it. And that's brought us to the financial system we have today, where, there's a couple of big guys that I don't know. I don't like the direction it's going. And Republicans are even more pro cryptocurrency than Democrats now. It used to not like be that. Like, I think that a lot of the people that started it were more liberal people, but I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So there is a liquidity hole at 12.5. The way this is behaving though, off of the retail sales, is a little bit weird. Is Hey Al-Mully? Morning. And good morning, Alan, Jiwi, Octavius, AO, Apol, Dom. We got well, it's been an okay week in trading. Like yesterday wasn't bad. They extended quite a bit after we traded on the upside. So yesterday they got a pretty solid uptrend, and you can see here today, in the overnight was like another half a handle there. Kind of puts us to where we're at. Now this kind of shows the advantage of being able to trade multiple contracts, right? Because I was able to take the downside with 2 contracts, and now I can sit on one contract and say like, well, okay, If they tag me at 20.5, then sure. But otherwise, I'd like to stay short. And I can give it the greatest chance of being able to go my way and run. But I don't know if that's going to happen today. Yeah, I don't think it will. In fact, I'm kind of concerned that today they will eventually come and tag me. The way this is behaving is a little bit odd. It is a little bit odd. But I don't think it's outside the range of possibility that they could go and break new highs. So... Now, while this is going, I am going to kind of continue my research that I was doing yesterday. I think that I kind of got, I went a little too far because I started looking for the data and I was like, oh, can I do like portfolio level stuff and everything? I actually found a really cool website. I won't pull it up here, but it is called SimFin, SIMFIN, and it lets you go in and pick qualifiers like filters and so forth for your portfolio and then backtests it for you. So that's really super cool. But I think that really what I should be looking for, because I think in equities, like if I'm going to do backtesting and stuff, I should probably spend that time backtesting momentum future strategies and not stock portfolios. I think that for the stocks, kind of my edge is knowing what's going on in the world and knowing what kind of companies and things to go for and picking things up that are like still really, really small. The rare earth and minerals area has gotten a lot of attention this week, by the way, although they're kind of mostly going down. But, those are the sorts of plays I should be making over there and not like doing a big backtest swing strategy sort of thing with stocks. Should do that in futures. So really what I need is just a really good watch list to keep track of the stocks that I'm interested in. Let's see here. I have this setup that plays several minutes pre-news. I close it before the news, of course, but every time this year the trade would have gone in the direction of the news. That's funny, man. Did you hear the good news? You will be able to trade live with the new Ultra Michael. No, I don't think I heard that. Let's see. Let's go to my email and search CME. See if there's been any new emails from the CME. I do not see anything new today. Oh, Uzi comes in with the link to the rescue. Go to site. Here we go. Initial listing of the Micro Ultra 10-year U.S. Treasury note. Okay. Effective Sunday, March 24th. all pending and relevant commodities futures trading regulatory review periods, the Board of Trade of the City of Chicago will list the micro ultra 10-year note futures and the micro ultra U.S. Treasury bond future contracts. Oh, micro ultra 10-year. Okay. So it will be on UB and TN. Yeah. And the new codes will be for the 10-year will be MTN. And the ultras, it will be MWN. Not MUB. Okay, whatever. That's weird. Are you sure? No, well, but usually they send out emails. So how did you guys find out about it then? There's something on Reddit? Rulebook. Contract. Oh. Okay, so the tick sizes and everything are still the same, but instead of it being $100,000 treasury bond, it is a $10,000 treasury note or bond. I am game. I can see myself trading those. Especially, I think TN could have some good liquidity and would probably be easier to trade in these situations where we've kind of been having trouble, you know? Where it's like the liquidity's just not there in the micros. Well, those might have the same issue, but they've given us too many opportunities. But if we start trading TN, that really kind of shifts it to like, I really use the micro yield futures to swing the curve rather than scalp, you know? Still could be interesting. Now the fees on it are kind of like your typical... Well, it'd be better than the micros. It looks like it probably will, you know, after your broker fee and everything, I bet you it still comes out to $1. Time you ditch those. I really love the micros. I think it's a great idea. I think that more retail traders should trade them, and that the micro yield futures being an active instrument would be a really, really positive thing for the industry. And there are some strategies with the yield curve that we have not quite figured out, but that could be, you know, better overall trading for us, that I would like to do, that the micro yields really make possible and make easier for us. Like, I think what's going on, here's what I think is going on, is that if you're a retail trader and you're trading on the CME, and you're a small fry like us, you're probably trying to scalp. And all of the people that have made money on the CME and everything are like, well, that's not how we make money. This is how we make money. How can we make it easier for them to do what we do and make money from it? Oh, I know. Micro treasury. Well, I make my money from spreading. So let's make micro treasury yield futures so that they don't have to worry about the difference, you know, in size between the 10 and the 30 and all of that kind of nonsense, because that's one of the things that makes it so that kind of have to have big size in order to deal with. You get rid of those, and then all of a sudden that kind of a strategy could work. It's just you have to have the momentum mean reversion kind of set up in the yields. What is the point of ultra micros? Well, okay, so there are ultras like UB, for instance, and having the ultras is important because you want to have an instrument that is kind of more on the run. So like because of the current environment, it kind of changed. I'm gonna have to back up because there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure that a lot of you guys know, but that I'm also sure that a lot of people watching don't know. So these features like ZN and ZB are deliverable, which means that if you hold this into first call, you could potentially be called up to go and deliver or buy $100,000 worth of treasuries per contract that you have, right? And that's kind of what makes the instrument move the way that it does. These micros, these are cash settled, but these are actually settled based on an actual real deliverable thing. Okay, and there's things that are good about cash delivered futures, but there are things that are good about futures on things that are actually deliverable, right? Well, what do you make deliverable? So you kind of have a basket of treasuries and you say treasuries with these QSIPs can be delivered, right? Amongst those QSIPs, there's going to be one that, because of the situation and so forth, is more efficient. It's cheaper for you to deliver that one. You'll make more money if you deliver that one than the other one. So the cheapest to deliver is the one that really sets the prices, essentially, right? And the way that it works right now is that the cheapest to deliver is actually a 7-year, not a 10-year. Okay? So that's kind of a problem if you want this instrument to be reflective of what the yields are at a 10-year, right? So what they did was they made a second instrument that is really truly a 10-year. So like the treasuries that are deliverable against it is much more narrow. So that means like less volume and liquidity to trade it, but it's more in line with a 10-year and with a 30-year over here, right? Well, the liquidity and the activity on those aren't like crazy or anything. And so I think what the CME is doing is they're saying, let's create micros for these. And micros will attract more people. I think it's a good idea. They deleted their message. What happened to it? It's funny. I hate it when people do that. There's a lot of people in Discord that do that. They'll type out a bunch of stuff and then they'll delete all of their messages later. I think that what they're doing is they want it so that like only the people immediately watching see that they had a comment and they don't. I don't know. No, I don't see. Oh, no, you're right, Paul. What really is the point of ultra micros when we already have micros that do seem reasonably small? Yeah. But I think that this one is not about, we want better opportunities for really small traders to be able to trade treasury instruments, right? I think that this one is more about, well, UB and TN don't have necessarily as much liquidity as we would necessarily want. So let's put micros out there, and that might make things better. Because especially with UB, you kind of have issues with liquidity because it moves so much, and the tick size is really big. So making that one micros makes a lot of sense. Getting another headline about the IDF eliminating a major commander. Oh, this one is in Hezbollah, though. But there's been a lot of that lately. So We need more coffee. I don't think I'm completely 100% there yet, am I? It'll come. It'll come. Zero Hedge says, despite ongoing mass corporate layoffs, government-supplied jobless claims data continues to decline. No, because when you look at the layoffs, what's happening is the amount of layoffs is not like as crazy as it appears. It is higher than normal, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. This is what causes a recession, yada, yada, yada. But what is happening is they are getting a lot more airtime and attention because those layoffs are happening in a lot of the really big tech companies. So all of the people that tend to talk online, that's them for starters. And then it's these big companies that kind of attract attention. But like the net of it is not actually that much. Another thing that I think is going on, though, and this is just kind of my own speculation, I think that a lot of the growth in the big tech companies has come at the expense of growth in smaller local tech companies. Because I still get people in my LinkedIn like every day looking for site reliability engineers and software engineers. But they're at smaller companies, right? So I think that everybody went over to the Googles and Microsofts and everything and thought they were all super great because they were getting hired by Google, when really the bar had kind of been lowered a little bit because they were trying to get as many people in to grow. And now that the environment has changed, they're kind of shedding all of that, and the growth is going to just kind of come down the pyramid. That's going to go to those smaller companies. And so what that means, so that's all speculative. And then the further speculation on speculation, is that those people that are getting laid off from Google and whatnot are finding new jobs very quickly, because these smaller companies just like desperately need the engineers. And that's why I think that the jobless claims data continues to be pretty like, they aren't staying on the rolls for very long. Yeah, Cisco, that one was a couple of days ago, wasn't it? Oh, you know, I don't know why I have this open. Oh, so we got a couple of things to talk about that are a little bit more political. Maybe we should just go down through them. They're saying that that's 1 hour ago. No, I swear on my life I saw, maybe it was like a pre-announcement or something, but I heard that Cisco was doing stuff a while ago, and that one stood out to me because they employ a lot of people in Utah. Interesting. Okay, so a couple of things that I'm seeing going on that I think are interesting and are worth noting. Okay. First one is there was a story out yesterday about RFK Jr.'s campaign being hit with mass staff exoduses. And a lot of people are saying that it's like the worst run campaign they've ever been on. They're very upset about it. They're saying that like the campaign manager or whatever is like sitting at resorts sipping on champagne on their Zoom calls and stuff, and that sort of, so it's kind of like starting to sound like a grift now. Like they know that there's no chance that they're going to win, but they're going to try and make as much money off it as possible. But I know that RFK Jr. has zero chance of becoming president, but I do kind of feel like it has kind of added a certain flavor to the political discussion. And with that happening, you know, I think that kind of shifts that out. So I think that's probably a good thing for Democrats overall, but I don't know, it's going to shift the conversation. They're saying illegals are surging the northern border to literally being concerned. Oh yeah, they're it's at least it's you're starting to see enough illegal immigration coming over the northern border that there's concern about it now. Yes. It's kind of funny that they have like all, at the official ports of entry, all of the infrastructure and stuff that you have to go through to get across the border at the ports of entry, but then there's all these places where people just walk across, right? Who wouldn't invade? Well, I don't know what to think of this one, but something that I see on right-wing media a lot these days is this whole thing that, like, there are a lot of Chinese immigrants coming across the border illegally as well. And they're kind of different. Like, they're not really very interested in telling you where they came from or talking to anybody. And so people are theorizing or whatever that they're actually being paid by the Chinese government to invade us or something. But it's not like an actual invasion. I mean, they're just people that want to come over for economic opportunity for the most part. And it's not necessarily a good thing for those of us that are already here, because that hurts wage growth for the lowest quintile of Americans, and it puts more strain on all of our systems. But it's not like the Mexicans are going to revolt and overthrow their country or something silly like that. That's just, I forget the word for that, but that's, I can't wait for this to bite us in the butt in the way that, like, normies start feeling it and the politicians who created the problem start running on fixing it. Yeah, I agree. Well, I'm not going to say I can't wait for it. I think that it's when that kind of time comes that it's not going to be pretty, I think they're going to amnesty them all. Maybe. There's something to... So, have you ever seen Milton Friedman talk about this? Because, like he presents it in a certain way that is kind of funny, right? Because he was like, he says, oh, illegal immigration is great as long as it's illegal, right? As soon as it becomes legal, then they have access to all of the welfare services and everything, and then it's a huge problem for your economy, right? But overall, he says it's a good thing, right? And he talks about why. And it's kind of giving away the game. I mean, he because you got to realize Milton Friedman was kind of like the corporation should do whatever makes them the most money kind of guy, which is not the law, by the way. The law kind of says that you have more responsibilities than that. And I would argue, see, Milton Friedman's kind of premise kind of came from, I think, like a free market is efficient kind of position. And I don't believe that. So my argument would be that eventually you're going to expose some inefficiency. It becomes a huge problem, right? That's why you have to have people that are actually looking at the system and making decisions about the system based on factors other than just what will make them the most money, but also what things will be best for society as a whole as well. And one of the problems that we have in our society today is that businessmen 100 years ago, really thought about those sorts of things in their legacy, and businessmen today don't. But I digress. He gives it away because he says, like, you have more people coming in. Population growth tends to drive GDP growth, tends to drive more business, and it makes labor cheaper, so business owners can make more money, right? So he's given away the game. The people with the most power in this country benefit significantly from increased illegal immigration. And then on top of that, Democrats love illegal immigration because the people that immigrate are significantly more likely to be in favor of larger government and more government benefits and whatnot. So that's why they love it. So all of the system incentives are basically in favor of increasing illegal immigration. And that's why it's been this way for like freaking my whole life. It's been this way for 30, almost 40 years now that this has been a thing. Now, you're right. There's a certain point at which it starts to affect everyday Americans that it becomes a problem. It becomes a big political problem. And it seems that we have gotten to that point. It seems that immigration is the biggest issue out there right now. And there's a very, very good chance that immigration ends up being the deciding factor that destroys Joe Biden's reelection chances, right? Like if it really comes down to the wire and you're like, okay, what is the thing that kind of put them over the top? I think the thing that put them over the top in 2020 was the abortion issue. But it seems now from the polling and stuff that we're getting that people now see the abortion issue as much more of a state issue. So they're not really voting on who's going to be president based on what they think about abortion. So you might not see those young people come out in droves like they did for Biden in 2020, right? So if the Democrats win, I think the issue that really sinks Republicans is Ukraine. It is. Most Americans generally still support Ukraine and still want to support the war effort. And I think Republicans are kind of towing the line, or what, not towing the line, but kind of like playing the line, between like, well, we're not like anti-Ukraine or anything like that, is we just want something in return. Like, so you're playing political games with it, but you're not putting yourself like staunchly in the anti-Ukraine camp. But I think that they're playing around with it enough that it is bothering a certain number of voters. Okay, so if the Republicans lose, I'm pinning it on that. That would be probably the issue that I think makes a difference. But if the Democrats lose, I think the thing that kills them is immigration. I think that it's having a large enough effect on a large enough swath of people that, they're turning very, very much so against Joe Biden's presidency. Because it really is like Donald Trump fixed the problem, and then Joe Biden came in and made a couple of executive orders that we all said would make things worse, and just, it was like, remember when right after the election happened, right before Joe started his presidency, and I said this is what his presidency is going to be like, and it's been exactly what I said. Right? He's going to do more stimulus, it's going to be inflationary, and then he's going to have like massive immigration. And that's what happened. So it is an issue now. Now, is it a big enough issue in like swing states to swing the presidency or to swing control of the House and Senate yet? I don't think so. I don't think so. And what you saw play out in Congress over the last few weeks, I think kind of highlights that, right? Is that the politicians still just play games with the immigration issue. Like, you could make a deal here, right? Democrats want more Ukraine aid. Republicans want the border secure. Okay? Trade one for the other. Equal trade. Everybody's happy, right? Honestly, all Joe Biden has to do is reverse those orders that he did at the beginning of the presidency, right? And then, or just straight up close the border if he wanted to, right? That's an easy, I feel like that's just like an easy trade to get money for Ukraine, right? Should be an easy trade. But Democrats don't want to make that trade. Why would they not make that trade? It's super crazy. What did they do instead? They said, oh, well, we have to have like a really comprehensive immigration deal. One that basically makes it so that nothing changes, that we still have like mass numbers of people coming across the border and yada yada. So it's just the absolute most terrible deal. But then they hold it up as like, oh, but they rejected the deal. They won't let us do anything on the border. No, just put the order out and fix it. But why don't they do that? Because Ukraine funding is actually not as important as they say it is. So think about this for a second. It actually gets kind of crazy when you think about this. And I'm going to be very clear. I totally support the people in Ukraine, and I do hope that they get more aid. Okay. But we're talking about $70 billion they want to put out. That's like $150, $200 a person in the US. Would you give $250 today to aid in the Ukraine war? Would you donate that directly to Ukraine? I wonder how many Americans would actually do that. I think that if you put that out, we're going to do it. Okay, we can't get the funding through Congress, so we're going to have a GoFundMe. Do you think that they would be able to raise $70 billion through a GoFundMe? I don't think they'd come even close. So this is a problem. It's kind of a problem. Like, yeah, we do need to support Ukraine and everything, but I mean, there is money involved, and this is our money, and a lot of people are kind of making the calculation that like they would rather have their money than have things turn out the way that they want in Ukraine. So what would be the consequences of this? Well, I think the consequences are that the line probably stays where it is. I mean, I think that it would be very difficult for Ukrainians, and it'll be rough, and they'll continue to lose people. But I'm not convinced that the current lines as they stand are going to change significantly still. So, because the way that I see it presented is, if we don't give them $70 billion, then Russia is just going to completely take over Ukraine. I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's a lot of Republicans, not myself, but I think there are a lot of Republicans that would be okay with that if it did happen. Just saying, well, this is not my problem. I kind of think, right? But that's kind of like the calculation that they're making. And so then you'd say, well, is this actually dire for Ukraine? Well, if it is dire for Ukraine, then why are Democrats still playing games with it? Because they could very easily change it. That's what I don't get. It's like they could very easily change it. Why don't the Democrats do anything if this is really like live or die? It says to me that it is not actually live or die, right? Okay, this is a good point. The money from the aid goes to U.S. defense firms to produce weapons for the U.S. military, and then Ukraine gets the stuff from the 80s and the 90s that would otherwise have to be destroyed, which is also a savings for the U.S. because that stuff gets used instead of just thrown away. True. Or at least that's one way of looking at it. But here's my way of looking at it, okay? My way of looking at it is this. Most Republicans' constituents do not want to spend their money on the Ukraine war. Not saying it's right, because I don't really agree with it. I think that we should do everything in our power to ensure that Russia doesn't take over there. Okay, but most Republicans don't see it. And that's why I was going through this whole, like, when you do the calculations, like, you willing to give your own money to it? What are, like, actually the consequences that we're talking about here? I understand why a lot of Republicans don't want to spend more money on it, okay? So what does that mean? Well, if you're a Republican senator or representative or whatever, your hands are kind of tied, honestly. Like, you cannot just do a clean Ukraine bill. Like, you're not going to get reelected if you do that. It's a big enough deal at this point that Republicans can't just go through. And the other issue is that this Congress hasn't done squat. It was basically the way that things were set up with the budget and everything else. This was going to be a lame duck Congress from the beginning. Everybody's been in denial. You know, like the politicians don't want you to know this, so they don't ever say anything on TV about it. But I'm just telling you, this has been a lame duck Congress. It's a Congress where there's no chance to pass anything. So Republicans want to have something to go to their constituents and have. The Republicans need to make a deal, right? And the only leverage that Republicans have is Ukraine and Israel funding. That's it. That's the only thing that they have that they can get any leverage to get anything that they want. Okay? So the reality of it is this: Republicans have to get something out of it. Okay? That's just the political reality. That's not going to change. There's no scenario where that changes. You can hate that. You can think that the world's supposed to be a different way, but that's just the current political reality. So what do you do about it? What do you do about it? The only people that can do anything in this situation is the Democrats, because there are plenty of political moves that the Democrats could make that their constituents would be okay with, or at least not super upset about. If Joe Biden made some changes to shut the border back down, he said, you know what? These were actually a bad idea. I think it would be a win for him. I think it could be a win for him. And it because, number one, it would make the situation better. He gets to claim responsibility for fixing it. Number two, it's less of a situation for the election, so that makes him more likely to get reelected. And then number three, he gets the things that he wants for not really giving up a whole lot. Seems like an easy deal to me. That's a possible move that the Democrats can make. They're the ones that can do something. They don't do it. Why not? Think about that. Like really? You can save lives. Make everybody in the United States more happy, save lives in Ukraine, and all you got to do is just say those orders that I put in place at the beginning of my presidency, they're rescinded. That's all you got to do. And you get all of these benefits, and they don't do it. Why not? Tell you why. Because they would rather keep the border open. It's more important to them that the border stays open. So you can complain about people playing games with Ukrainian lives all you want, but who's really playing games? As a non-American, it's pretty clear to me what we should do. Never trust in a sound reasoning of foreign politicians. I'm 100% sure Ukraine ruse the Budapest Agreement. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and this is another issue. Okay, so this is the other thing that they're not saying. It's like, it's a thing. If you're a political watcher, you know that it's a thing, but you're never going to hear anybody on the television say anything about it. Okay. Germany has money. France has money. They're much more involved in this than we are. Okay. If Russia takes over Ukraine, and then all of the Baltic countries are next, and then you've got Russia knocking on Germany's door. And they kind of want a part of Germany too, right? So if anybody in the world outside of Ukraine should be concerned about what's going on right now, it should be Germany and France. And yet we still can't get them to spend that 2% GDP that they're supposed to for NATO. What's with that, right? Why is it that 70 billion has to come from the United States? Shouldn't the bulk of the money be coming from Europe because they're more involved? Why is the United States the ones that have to foot the bill? I mean, I would be happy to do it, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So if it's not going to happen, then what's the next step? Well, doesn't everybody Isn't it just the Republicans? I thought it was just the crazy Republicans in the United States that don't want to give money to Ukraine. Huh? Why does France and Germany get a pass? Think about that one for a bit, right? Like, the reality here is that nobody wants to spend the money, and they're just passing it off on the Republicans, because the Republicans are happy to take it. That's really what it is. Billy says, after this 70 billion, it will be another 70 billion, then another, and then another with no end in sight. There has to be more accountability of the money. And I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Problem is that it's very, very difficult to actually do that. You know, I think that in a situation like this, you kind of have to accept that a certain amount of the money is just going to go to grift and corrupt purposes, and that you can't have 100% efficient allocation of the money. There's just kind of limitations with the systems that we have and the way that society is structured to do that. So I don't know if the way that it's gone in Ukraine is better or worse than normal, but like, this happened in the Vietnam War, for instance. I mean, this has kind of always been the problem whenever the United States gets involved in a conflict like this, is that their partner in the country ends up being not a very good partner. I think that they've lucked out for the most part in Ukraine because Zelensky has been pretty good. But you can tell over the last few months that even Western leaders are a little bit fed up with him to some extent. They think that he was too much, went too far. You know, like, they spent all this money for that offensive. It didn't really accomplish anything. They lost a lot of resources and a lot of people. And I think a lot of Western leaders are upset at him for doing that. Because NATO is designed to keep the Americans in, the Russians out, and the Germans down. Why the Germans down? I don't understand that one. No, I'll tell you why it's not. Is Germany just doesn't want to spend the money. Like, the Eurozone parts of the Eurozone are in technical recession right now, right? They don't really have the money to give, to be honest. If they were doing a $70 billion thing, it would be like a big problem for their budgets and stuff. It would cause political problems in their country. That's all I'm saying. US EU countries should pursue nukes. Oh, please no. I don't know what you can do there, because it's still just absolutely crazy to me that Russia invaded, you know? I really thought that there would be enough of a disincentive on that one to stop it from happening. It's really crazy to me, the amount of resources and so forth that Russia is wasting on this conflict. You know? To the point about it'll be another 70 billion and another 70 billion. You're probably correct that if we give Ukraine $70 billion, that will not be the last time that we have to give them more funding. But I really don't think that Russia can afford to go much further with this thing. Like, I don't know if they have the people to handle another big wave of destruction over there, man. I don't know if I don't think that you want to do an offensive necessarily. I don't know. I really don't think you should be doing an offensive unless you're really, really confident that it's going to work. Like, that's kind of the problem. And we did an offensive and it didn't work. So that immediately should have you be like, okay. But you get more weapons to at least keep the lines intact and everything. And if the Russians were to make a large offensive and it failed, I think that would be the end of Russia. I mean, we may already be in the end of Russia. I think we underestimate how much it has weakened that country. So that might not be the last 70 billion, but it wouldn't go on forever. Well, I was kind of thinking maybe they will actually go up for new highs, but they eventually gave it up and settled back into this kind of 10 half area. Do you think that Russia can go on forever? How? You can't, like, with the demographics of their country, I'm not even sure that that country can last another 50 years. It's not going to be pretty there in Russia in 50 years, I tell you that much. So 70 billion over many years? Well, but the last bill that we had, what was the last bill? Let's see here. Oh, it's been 75 billion overall. Well, yeah, but I'm saying, okay, so you got 15,000 Gurkhas, but then if they get decimated, then what? Like, Russia was already doing conscription and stuff like that, right? Their military is not very effective now. Most of their well-trained soldiers are gone. They won't be decimated. Well, yeah, this is true. They rose the draft age, yeah. I'm telling you, man. Look, before this war, I had concerns about the long-term situation in Russia because their population growth has been so bad and the trajectory of the demographics is so bad that, you know, in a couple of decades from now, they just wouldn't be able to keep up their infrastructure and so forth. Like a population decline collapse sort of a situation in Russia is already like a real concern. And then they went and like killed all of their young men. So there is a real problem. And you know, the economy in Russia wasn't super great before, very dependent on oil. You know, they lasted for a while. There was some things like the economic impacts on Russia weren't as immediate as a lot of people predicted, but the Russian economy doesn't look good right now. So I don't think that this conflict could go like full on fighting the way it has been for another year or two beyond that. Sure, but at some point, Russia kind of has to think about, like, okay, we can either A, destroy Ukraine, or B, actually have a viable country in 20 years. Like, how much you going to double down on it, you know? Well, Putin has already chosen option A. I don't know. I don't know enough to know, like, what the effect of this 70 billion that we're talking about explicitly is. But I don't think it's the case that Russia can continue on forever. Right? The Russia believe, like, the whole thing is that Russia's calculation is that the West will give up before he gives up. If they put another 70 billion on that, that might change the calculus. Well, 50 billion from the EU would be great. But then that just comes back to, okay, is the 70 billion from the United States actually that important? Because to be honest with you, I think that the reason that they want it is mostly for political reasons. That it will look really bad for Joe Biden if they don't get it and things in Ukraine get worse. I would prefer that we pass the 70 billion. But I'm just telling you what you got to do to get it. And it's a simple thing. They don't want to do it. Okay, well, still kind of wiggling around here, so... Man, the dollar, though, the dollar just got slaughtered today. There's some new lows in the dollar. I don't know if that one's going to happen. The free world needs Ukraine to reach their internationally recognized borders. I really do not see how you do that without Western powers getting more directly involved. The front lines have become so fortified. Yeah, I don't know if that one's doable, to be honest with you. Jeez. Just hearing something about the worth of MicroStrategy's bitcoins. I think that they were really close, man. If it was not for like this ETF thing going on, I think that MicroStrategy would be like in dire straits, but maybe now it all works out for them. And everybody will treat him like he's a genius and everything, when I really think that what he did was stupid and shouldn't be happening. Well, if we allow one bully like Putin to break international laws, we're encouraging other bullies to try the same. Hell yeah, the cat's out of the bag on that one already, for sure. But, you know, like, listen, you can't make these hard lines so much, right? It's not, nobody wants to allow Putin to break international laws. Okay. The question is, what are you willing to give up in order to enforce it? Right? And Putin made the calculation that the West was not willing to give up enough to stop him. And it seems to me that that calculation was correct. Like, the West wasn't willing to have open conflict over it. Then how are you going to stop them? Sure. Sure, but like, again, how much are you willing to give up to stop them? Because I don't see how you stop them without the West getting into direct military conflict, right? Right. The West is willing to fund a proxy conflict up to a certain amount, but that's it. And if that amount that they're willing to give is not enough to stop the invasion, then Pandora's box has already been opened. I'm very skeptical that you do 70 billion from the, well, weren't you just arguing with me that the 70 billion from the US and 50 billion from the EU wouldn't be enough? I don't know. So you get 70 billion from the US and 50 billion from the EU, and you continue fighting on. I'm really skeptical that like takes things back to the borders from before the war. But I'm also very skeptical that like the political situation to allow that is actually like there, you know? Yeah. Well, that's true. Like at the moment, it's starting to get into Ukraine can't even defend what they have now. Because they're just running out of it. They're outnumbered and they're running out of ammunition. And but I mean, that kind of plays a little bit more into what I'm trying to say, right? Because what I'm trying to say is that the problem, the concern that we all have about this is basically already a problem now. I think that it's only a matter of time before you see other dictators make their moves and so forth. I do. And with China would 100% invade Taiwan if they had the ability to. I think that by the time they have the ability to, that it will be like so very much not worth it to them, but time will tell. But I think that as soon as you pulled out of Afghanistan, that pretty much said it. That the United States does not have the what is the word? The United States does not have the resolve to stick with a foreign proxy conflict more than 10 years. So any dictator out there that's willing to spend more than 10 years fighting a proxy war with the United States, they can take whatever they want. I think so. I think that it's already happened. Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. I would agree with that. It's so again, I think that they should get the 70 billion. Like if I was in Congress, I would be okay with giving them the 70 billion outright, just doing a clean resolution. I would be asking like, what's the limit? Okay. So like we do this like again, you very quickly run into a sunk cost fallacy, right? Okay, well, we already invested a lot in this to stop it, and it wasn't enough. So now we need more money. So if we put in the 70 billion and the EU puts in the 50 billion, and then we get here like 2 or 3 years from now, and they still need more money, are we going to do it again? And how many times are we going to do that until you say, actually, this just doesn't work, right? So that's the first thing that I would want to hear is like, what's the limit? Like, what are the qualifications that makes us say, okay, you know what? We shouldn't put any more money into this. Because you could just put more money into it forever, right? And it just becomes a hole and you accomplish nothing. And it's better to just leave it. Like with Afghanistan, was it worth all of the money that we put into Afghanistan when in the end we just pulled out and gave it to the Taliban? Like, no, it was all that money was wasted. Right? So maybe if we knew that was going to happen, maybe we should have given up earlier. I don't know. But like you got to have a stop loss, right? Somewhere. Unless your stop loss is you blow the account, okay? Which means like your country ceases to exist, is essentially, right? But I would be willing to give them this 70 billion if we had that discussion, right? The problem is that I'm not the one that can do anything. Even if I was a Republican in Congress, I wouldn't be the one that could do anything. Like straight up, if the Speaker of the House came up and said, I think that we have the votes to pass a clean resolution on more foreign aid to Ukraine, and he put it up, he'd be gone the next day. With the current rules in the House. The Republicans can't do anything. It's not like just because the Republicans don't want to do it. The political situation for them with their constituents is such that you just can't do it. You understand? And there's real arguments here. Okay? It's not like I think that people are trying to turn this into like it's a moral right or wrong issue. It's not. People are going to die there either way. Okay? We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know that another $70 billion is actually going to resolve the conflict. But we don't know how far this actually goes. It may be better to just cut your losses and run. How much are you going to put into it? There's like varying degrees of this isn't like a moral right or wrong thing. It's a question of like how much money do you invest into a certain thing? It's like you're in a stock and that stock keeps going down and you keep buying more of it and you keep buying more of it. And yeah, sure, if the stock goes up, you're going to have a ton of it and maybe it works out. But you know, with stocks, most of the time it doesn't actually. Most companies do end up going bankrupt in the end and unlisted. So like, at what point do you stop putting the money in? That's actually the question here, right? And you shouldn't be surprised that a portion of the population that is kind of against foreign aid in general and thinks that the money should be spent here doesn't want to spend it, right? And that's just what the situation is. I really don't think that you're going to change the majority of the Republicans' view on this. Like turning around and calling them Russian shills and all this, it's not working. You're not getting what you want from that, right? And see, Multi-Axo says take care of home first. Yeah. I'll make the opposite argument of that, okay? The success that we have here at home is directly related to the partnerships that we have abroad. Okay. Who are the most successful people? Who are the people in society that are the most valued? It's the people that make the people around them more valuable. The United States has the position, has the economy that it does because of, not in spite of, because of the relationships that it has abroad and the trade and prosperity that those relationships bring. So, if you create a situation where none of our partners can trust us to have resolve on anything anymore, that directly affects American prosperity. It does. Okay. I am, for the most part, the war hawk, right? But I understand what's going on, and I'm just trying to tell the people on the other side, like the Democrats and the people that want the Ukraine aid, like this is the situation, right? You can come and call Republicans Russian agents and all of these sorts of things. It doesn't change it. Like the political situation is what it is because people have opinions and it has kind of snowballed on the Republican Party. And I don't think that there's any amount of propaganda or things that you can do to change that. So there's absolutely zero chance that the Republicans in the House are just going to give in. They would pass Ukraine funding, but not without getting something in return. That's the situation. So, if you're really concerned about this issue, and you really, really want to make sure that $70 billion bill gets passed and Ukraine gets more financial support, you should be going and talking to Democrats and saying, just make the effing deal. Don't come and make some crazy bill that's huge and has all sorts of reasons that people are going to disagree with it and not want it. Just do the simplest thing that gives the Republicans what just shut the border down. That's or rescind the orders about who can be processed for amnesty and all that sort of stuff. Just rescind the orders that Biden put in at the beginning. And they passed the Ukraine bill in return. That's all you got to do. That's the only way that it happens. When we have the imbalance of taking care of others versus ourselves, and how do we take care of others? I don't think that it actually comes down to that. So like, okay, so we have to kind of get into the budget a little bit more, right? Because the whole thing is like, oh, the U.S. has a huge deficit. This is not sustainable. What are we going to do? Yada, 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 right? Okay, well, the budget deficit is primarily because of Medicare and Social Security, okay? Social Security is actually a pretty solvable issue. There's a lot of little tweaks that you can make. The one that the Democrats like is to get rid of the cap. So like right now, you don't pay Social Security taxes on the income that you make past 180,000 or something like that, right? That wouldn't completely close this shortfall, but like there's a bunch of different policy proposals and so forth, and they could probably fix Social Security, okay? Medicare, bigger problem. I don't know what you do about Medicare, but like that one's insolvent. You probably have to come in and do something and fix the US medical system overall to control for costs, because medical costs in the United States are just insane. Right? So the system's not working. It's not really a free market. So you're not getting a free market that brings prices down. You're not. You're going to have to make some changes there. Didn't like Obamacare. I didn't think that really fixed it. But there is something that you can do that. Maybe then you can kind of fix those sorts of things. Okay? Those are the things that account for basically the shortfall. When we're coming and we're spending all of this money on foreign aid, we're spending money on this service, and yeah, it totally gets wasted. Like the amount of money that gets wasted in military, it's retarded. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely insane and completely unacceptable and all of these sorts of things. But it's also like pretty much bound, if not guaranteed to happen one way or another, and is not actually that big of a problem to our overall budget deficit. So, like, if you have a budget, right, and you have like $5,000 in expenses a year, or sorry, you have $5,000 in expenses a month, let's just say, and you only make $2,000, then is it really a problem that you gave a nickel to a hobo on the street? Right? Like, okay, I won't give money to hobos on the street anymore. That doesn't solve any of your problems, right? The Medicare and Social Security, it's like 60-70% of it. So until you're doing something about those, it's kind of pointless to talk about all the other stuff, right? But Republican politicians love to talk about those things because the Republican base has kind of been conditioned to respond to that stuff. Like, I'm a Republican, okay? I'm just telling you, this is how my side of the aisle works. Right? So there's the thing is like, okay, the Ukraine aid, it's a lot. 70 billion across 300 million people is a lot. It's like $170 a person or something like that. Okay. Doesn't actually end up being that because, you know, the most of it gets paid from the rich people and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, but it's still a lot. But the US government makes a lot of money, so like it actually is a drop in the bucket. It actually is not a huge deal. And helping the people in Ukraine does not affect in any way whatsoever our ability to take care of people here at home. It really doesn't. But you might say, but we do have problems at home. Well, that's true. But it's not because we don't have enough money, man. It's not because we don't have enough money. It's because we keep creating these stupid systems. It's because they just don't want to actually defend the border, right? The border issue is not an issue of money. It's an issue of politicians create an intentionally broken system that allows as much illegal immigration as possible. That's why there's a problem, right? The only reason why these two things are connected is because the thing that Democrats want the most is Ukraine aid, and the thing that Republicans want the most is the border to get closed. That's the only reason why there's a connection. Seems like an easy deal to me. I think that the Republicans would jump at any kind of deal that you gave them that was actually realistic. The only person in the world that needs to be convinced on something here is Joe Biden. All you got to do is Joe, just stroke of a pen, man. You get everything you want. I don't know. Maybe it is a pride thing, right? Like, he's going to double down on it, right? He's made certain decisions. He's not going to go back on the decisions that he made. It makes him look weak, yada, yada, yada. It's always, there's kind of saving face sort of a thing. I'm starting to notice that a lot this year. So, it's something that's like really irking me right now. Can I shift gears a little? No, actually, there's something else we got to talk about, guys. We talked about that a lot. That wasn't even the thing that we were going to talk about. Did you guys see this story yesterday about like Russians with nukes in space and stuff? That was like such a circus, such a media circus, because it was like, there's like a real national security risk we need to talk about. We need to like declassify this and talk about it. Few hours go by. Oh, it's a national security risk from Russia. Few hours go by. Oh, and it's about space. And then they tell us actually it's that Russians are putting nukes in space, I think. Man, the way that whole all played out was kind of, it was, I actually would say it's funny. So like as soon as it came out, there was Republicans being like, this is like the deep state is trying to do things to try and ensure that they get Ukraine funding. Maybe it's Ukraine funding, but it's the deep state playing their games sort of a thing. Because it's just too perfect that this happens after what happened yesterday in I forget what it was, but they're saying like this is a distraction. Well, I think that you're always going to be able to find a reason where like, because there's always something going on. And if one of these two things comes up, you're always going to make an excuse about how that's trying to upstage that. And I don't pay any attention to those sorts of things, right? But what I do pay attention to is a senator comes out and says, hey, there's a big national security risk about this. And then like almost immediately you had all these other people coming out and are like, yeah, there is, but like it's not an immediate risk. It's not really a big deal. It's not worth it for us to make this intelligence available. Like, so what this was one rogue senator who is kind of like a war hawk Republican sort of guy going rogue and saying something, and then everybody else involved going like, no, sit down, like, So that was wild. But the thing that was wild about it to me was how social media picked it up, man. Because some people on TikTok were getting like, oh my gosh, what is this? Are we all gonna die? Like, no. The funny thing is like, here's the thing also that I thought was funny about it. Okay. The Russian capability is a real concern, right? So you're telling me now all of a sudden the Russians have the ability to put nukes in space? Like they only just now got that capability? Like what? Because in my mind, the Russians had the capability to put a nuclear missile in space like in the 80s, right? Like, why are we talking about that? And why is this the issue now? Maybe that's not actually it. Maybe the reports are wrong and it's not actually about nuclear missiles in space. I actually think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I think that what it is that the Russians have said, oh, if we go and we detonate a nuke in space in this particular way, that the EMP wave combined with the satellites pushing each other and this and that and the other would basically like destroy all the satellites. I think that's what it actually is. But it was a little hysterical still. Because like even with that, we've known for years and years that like Russians disrupting satellite infrastructure and the impacts that it could have on the global economy and all those sorts of things is like a real concern. Like this isn't anything new. It's not anything new. But it's just like another little tea leaf to kind of know like about what's going on and stuff. There's definitely a political football being passed back and forth here. It seems to me that the Democrats are very, very much invested in getting that Ukraine aid, but that they're not willing to give up anything to get it. And so they're trying to play every trick that they have to try and make it happen otherwise. And I just don't think it's going to work like that. I think that if you're a Democrat and you really want the Ukraine aid to be passed, that you go to Joe Biden and you say, do an executive order. Or you create a law that would do just the things that those executive orders would do. And nothing else. Cosmos 954. Oh no, I don't know about that one. No, I don't think it would be rejected. So remember, there was a deal that the Senate made, and that one got shot down. Now, Democrats were saying Donald Trump shot it down. They didn't want this issue to be resolved before the election happened, and so that's why Republicans rejected it, even though it was a solution to the border. Absolute bullshit. That is not what happened at all. The bill that was proposed was so absolutely terrible for Republicans. It was like, we only do something after 5,000 people have come over the border that day, and any kind of appeals about this sort of a thing now automatically go to the most liberal court in the country. Like the actual provisions that were in this bill were just like absolutely crazy. It was mind-boggling that there were Republicans involved in negotiating that agreement because it was such a terrible agreement for Republicans. It would be rejected if they're intelligent. I'm saying have a bill that says these are the qualifications for amnesty, and if you don't meet them, you're immediately pushed back. You don't have to go through the court and all of these sorts of things unless you already meet a certain level, right? And reinstate stay in Mexico. Like, you literally just have to put the border to the way it was before Joe Biden's presidency. So that's like a bill with like two things in it, right? Or two executive orders. That's it. None of this other stuff. Republicans would take it. Because the truth is, the Republicans want to pass the Ukraine bill. The hawk side of the party is still pretty powerful. They would be doing it. They would be passing a clean bill if the constituents weren't so against it. And like I said, again, we doubled down, man. That I'm starting to realize that the natural human reaction to being wrong about something is to double down on it. Like we know in trading, doubling down on a loser is a great way to lose accounts. But a lot of people do it. I think that most traders have probably messed with that at least once. Why did we do it? It's human nature, man. It's gotta be human nature. So I've been doing, I've been trying to get into games a little bit more recently. I haven't been able to find a game that I'm really into. There have been, for a while there, I was complaining, like, there aren't any new games. That everything that comes out is just stupid and doesn't go anywhere. Well, Pal World came out. That's not really my kind of game. And then there's this other one called something Divers or something like that. So it's kind of like Left 4 Dead, except for that you're Marines that go to other planets to rid them of an alien infestation or something like that, right? Hell Divers, I think is what it's called. That's pretty big. Still not my kind of game. Okay. But another game that's kind of on the horizon is Stormgate, which is supposed to be the successor to Blizzard-style real-time strategy games. And basically, the people that created StarCraft 2 left Blizzard to create this company and make their own real-time strategy game. And I go and I play it, and what I see is developers doubling down on all of the stupid things that I hated about StarCraft 2. It's like, in StarCraft 2, people didn't like that you could turn Zerglings into these little rolling balls of acid called Banelings that explode on the army and can basically destroy your entire army in seconds, and there's like, before you even realize what's going on, your army is gone. It's dead. People didn't like that. Okay, so if I'm a developer, I'm like, people didn't like that particular gameplay setup, so let's just not have it in our new game. Like, it was so negative, people hated it so much, we just won't have it. That's what I would do. But no, see, they made it in StarCraft 2. They kind of liked it. You guys just didn't give it a good enough chance. We just need to tweak it a little bit in this way, and then we can get it to work. So what do? They tweak it a little bit, so now it's the workers can do it. So you lose workers in response. Okay, yeah, but you still lose half your army in seconds, and it's stupid, right? Don't try and fiddle on the edges. It's doubling down. In Stormgate, things still move like a blob. Like, you know, like as like a pretty good little blob. They all move together. It ruins the game. They didn't learn this from the last time around. No, it's that all the community came in and said, we don't like this. And they said, well, we do. We're going to double down on it next game. That's what they're doing. This is because that's the human's natural. I've never seen a situation where there's a game, right? And it's usually like they're making a sequel, right? It's like there's the first game, people like the first game, then they make the second game, and there's something in the second game that people don't like, right? I've never seen a situation where they make the third game and then they fix all of the things that the community didn't like and they get it right. Never seen it. They always just try and tweak the things in the second game that people didn't like instead of just going, okay, let's just do what the audience wants. Never happens that way. Is that going on in politics right now too? On both sides? I think it is. I think that Joe Biden cannot make a presidential order to rescind his previous presidential orders on the border. He would lose face doing it. He has to double down on it, right? I don't think that the Democrats in Congress can give up on Ukraine. Even if the situation wasn't, I'm not saying this is, again, I think that they should give him the $70 billion. But what if the situation was that it's hopeless and no amount of money is going to change the situation there? Which honestly, I don't think that is the case, but it's not outside of the realm of possibilities. And a lot of people do believe that. Okay? A lot of people do believe that the front lines are so set that you're just not going to be able to claw back all of that territory. I'm not sure that it's going to happen, to be honest with you, but I think that they need more money, but I'm not sure that even if you give them more money, I'm not convinced that they're going to take all that territory back. I really don't think it will happen. Okay. There's absolutely no way you will ever hear the Democrats say, we need to cut our losses. It will never happen. It'll be just like with Afghanistan. Like, if we're there 30 years from now still fighting Russia, the Democrats will still be saying, oh, we need to stay in there. They will never be the ones because they started that war, right? It was a Democrat president that started it. They wanted the funding and everything. So now they have to forever double down on that decision. This is what it is. Until you get like a new generation of people in, and then maybe they don't feel like it was their decision anymore, and then they want out. I think that's kind of like how Afghanistan went, right? Because Republicans were the ones that started those wars, and so Republicans were always the ones that were like, "Oh, we need to stay in there. We need to show our allies that, you know, and all these sorts of things." But then when Trump came along, that's when you started to, it was like new generation of people, they didn't really feel like that was their decision, and now they were willing to give up on it. No, it was a bad decision in my opinion, but what's the title of the background music? The current one? Dance Mirage. Listen, just go to Stream Beats rather, and play their 100 Thieves hype traps. That's what the playlist is. How long are we going to talk about politics? I don't know. I'm kind of wondering, like, I think that I'm making the same points over and over again to try and get a little bit more back and forth discussion about it. And you guys keep saying enough about it for me to want to try and progress the conversation. But I'm also concerned that I have maybe gone down that path and that we've already said everything that we're going to say about it. Biden has shifted a lot of his views on issues. I don't know if that's actually true, Vig. I think that so I kind of see what you're saying, though. Like, Democrats are really good at going with the crowd when opinion shifts. So I think that the Democrats are really like, whatever is considered like the most progressive view, Democrats want to be in on it. For sure. But when it comes to politics, I don't think it's the same. When you have a particular bill and it gets presented and the Democrats push really hard to try and get it passed, and like, let's say that it doesn't get passed, you will never, ever hear them come back years later and be like, oh, that was a bad law. I'm glad that we didn't pass that. They'll never say that. Never happens. Even like, and you'll definitely never hear them admit it, right? Like, you're never going to hear Biden say, oh, you know, that law that led to so many black people in the United States being incarcerated that I implemented, that was a bad idea. You're never going to hear him say that. Never. And when it comes to a war, it was like with the Vietnam War. Democrats started the Vietnam War. There is no way, if it had not been for this is just not my day today. I'm having a hard time remembering names. If it wasn't for Nixon, I don't think that would have ended. Because it did happen. Like, they did pull out under Carter, but that was mostly because it already got started by Nixon. So you see the parallels to today, like with Afghanistan. It was like, well, Democrat did end it. Republican kind of started it. It's kind of weird how that works. But it was really the Democrat that really ended it before, and it was the Republican that really ended it before. Huh. Well, I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a contradiction in the logic that I just used there. It is a very weird historical parallel, though, isn't it? More broadly, though, I don't think that there is any chance in hell that you will ever hear Democrats say we should give up in Ukraine. Like, it could be 50 years from now, and I guarantee you that the Democrat Party will still be saying we need to stay there. That scenario that I just laid out is, like, not realistic. Certainly, Russia would collapse well before 50 years. If we're still there 50 years, Russia would collapse. Okay, but I'm just saying, in the hypothetical world where that happens, there's no way that Democrats would. But we're also talking about large timescales, right? Like, if some rule got proposed last year, you're not going to see Democrats turn around the next year and then admit, oh, that was a bad idea, right? Like, they might admit that something 10 years ago was a bad idea. Something 20 years ago was a bad idea, right? Because then it's not. But it's like the sting of it has to go away. Is that a fair way of presenting it? Is this like the closer you are to the decision, the more likely people are to double down on it. Dementia isn't the same as shifting views. Can we find this, the loss making prevailing open positions, like who's on the hook, longs or shorts, kind of solving the, no, I mean, you can't solve the market, right? So it's kind of a little difficult to sort out, actually. I think we can move on to this, yeah. So like, let's just say that we've been trading in a range, and the cumulative delta, that is the market buys and the market sells, are completely equal. So there are still open positions out there. Are there more open positions on the buy side or on the sell side? With the information that we have, we can't know. Okay. The CME, or the CFTC rather, has reports on a regular basis that tell us like what the open interest is and like what the balance of the opens is and all of that sort of stuff, right? But on an intraday basis, there's no way for us to know. There's really not, because, okay, yeah, somebody sells into me, so there's one guy that's short, and then there's one guy that's long, that's like the market maker, okay? But then you have another contract that happens maybe at the exact same spot, and that could be the market maker bailing and taking out his position, or it could be the market order guy deciding to bail out of his position, or it could be both of them, just trading against each other again. There's no way for me to know, right? In order to be able to know, I would have to be able to associate every order with a trader. If every order had a trader ID on it, then I could say this trader ID has X contracts and this trader ID has X contracts. And then maybe I could see a situation where one guy clearly has a large position and maybe they would try and stop him out or something like that. But even if you had that, then it's like, okay, but how far would you have to move it to stop him out, right? It's like, if I only have to move it down one tick to stop this guy out, then sure, that makes total sense, right? Market maker, go for him right away. But I think the reality is we don't have that information. It's intentionally kept from us. And if we had that information, they would just adjust for it. Well, they don't open positions against or for retailers. Yeah. So like, what I can do is this. Let's say I'm not a market maker, like somebody with an agreement with the exchange and all of these kinds of obligations and that sort of a thing. But let's just say that I'm a really big floor trader. Okay. So I can do whatever I want, but I have tens of thousands of contracts to be able to do it with. Okay. I could come in here and I could say, I think that the direction for the day is up. So I am willing to take on inventory long. That doesn't mean that I don't have sell orders out there. It's just that net, I'm going to have more buy orders than sell orders, at least right now, because I want to have long inventory and I want it to move up. Okay. So maybe I'm doing this and I have like 1,000 contracts on or something like that, right? I'm long 1,000 contracts. Okay. Would I put a huge 4K order at 13? Well, the market can kind of be a little skittish around those kinds of big orders, right? I'm certainly not going to put this big order there and like hold it as an iceberg to prevent the market from going up, right? I'm going to pull my orders here to make it easier for it to move up, right? And that's kind of the sort of thing that market makers can do, is they can say, here's what my inventory is. Here's what I need to be able to make in order for my strategy to work out, yada, yada, yada. And I'm going to kind of pull more of my orders on the offers sometimes when it ticks up in order to make it easier for price to move my direction. Now, of course, if somebody else comes out here and is like, I need to sell, and they start market selling, then that doesn't work, right? But what the market maker can do, is that they can choose to hold more or less liquidity on one side to kind of assist the market in moving the direction that they want, generally speaking. So if there was nothing else going on, the market would generally kind of go where they want it to. That's why it's really important to watch those pulling orders, right? Because if I'm coming in here, I mean, there's pretty good trade on both sides right now. There's 5K versus 3K at 12, right? But if I'm coming in here and it's like every time that it ticks up, there's only like 300 contracts traded. And then every time that it tries to tick down, it's like 5,000 contracts traded. Well, that's a pretty good indication that we're going to be moving up, right? So that's how a market maker can kind of like make things happen, right? Now, the other thing that you can do is like, let's say you have a couple of contracts long down here, like you have 1,000 contracts long, and then there's this price. It would be better if we were like at the high of the day, but let's just say that the high of the day was like right here. And I say, you know what? If we go like 1 or 2 ticks above that, there's going to be some stops, right? Since maybe I already have 1,000 contracts, but maybe I can trade 5,000 contracts, right? Then I can totally like hit this 3 here and hit 2 here in the hopes that it triggers a stop run. But then I'm going to have to get out up here, right? So there's kind of this game with it, right? Because me selling is going to cause it to move down. Me buying is going to cause it to move up. There might be a situation where me buying might be able to create enough of a reaction that it triggers other buying, it moves up, and then when I sell, I make more of a profit, right? But it's like, it's very, very limited. So you've got to be really careful about this kind of paradigm idea that like the market is just looking to stop you out, and if we can figure out which side is going to make more money, then we can play that game. Because if it's like a dead market, I think maybe right now we could probably consider it kind of in that space. But if we're in a dead market, right? And I decide there's more retail traders long than short, so the market maker is going to go and blow things up. Well, if everybody knew that, then that would change how they would trade, and then the market maker just does something different. Like, I think the reality is that the market maker makes money either way, usually. You know what I'm saying? Yesterday, we had like 3 or 4 huge icebergs in the offer on ES. I believe over 10K contracts. Is that interpretable for today? No, absolutely not. Because I don't think that past volume is really very indicative of what's going on. I mean, there are trends, but like the limitation of like whether something is very limited. You kind of have to know what's causing the trend and how much volume is going to trade the trend, at least on an intraday basis. You get to swing trading, then you can kind of do those sorts of things. Like if that's what you want to do, you should swing trade. Just saying. So like, I always like to give the example of tic-tac-toe, mass tic-tac-toe. So let's say that we played a game. Actually, let's not do tic-tac-toe. Let's just do heads or tails, right? I come out here and I say, I am going to choose heads or tails. So if I choose heads and you choose heads, then you win. And all of the people that choose tails lose. So let's say that, you get tokens. Everybody starts with 100 tokens And each time that you play, you have to bet 1 token, right? So if you guess correctly whether I'm going to say heads or tails, then you win a token or something like that, right? Well, I can see what choices you're making. So maybe there's a timer. We have like 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds to put your votes in. And then at the end of 30 seconds, I look at it and I say, are there more heads or are there more tails? And then I choose the option that will result in the most people losing, right? So when you do something like that, it should be 50-50 whether I choose heads or tails. But because I'm watching your answers, most people will lose. Most people will not get 50% win rate. Most people will get a higher win rate than that, right? Because I can look at here and I can see, are there more heads or are there more tails? Okay. But what if the number of heads and the number of tails was shown to you as you're picking? So you get to pick heads or tails, but you can see how many people have already chosen heads, and you can change your answer. You can go back and forth, right? Then what I think you would see happen is 50% would be heads, 50% of you would be heads, and 50% of you would be tails most of the time. Because you guys know that, 60% of us chose tails, then he's almost certainly going to choose heads, right? So that's why that game doesn't, where you can't win that game with the market maker. The only way you can win that game with the market maker is if you beat him to being the market maker, which means you get at the front of the queue. That's the only way you can win that game. The market maker can lock up one side in a range away from take profit or break even and let the other side eat liquidity until the loss making positions get wrecked. Yeah. But potentially. But I'm saying that, like, gaming that out is not going to be very predictive of which way it's actually going to go next. Especially if there was a way for you to actually sort it out. Right? And that's the whole thing is that if we were setting this game up and I wanted to make the most money for myself, I would set it up so that you guys can't see how many are heads and how many are tails. And that's basically the way that our market is set up. I can see what the balance of the market orders are doing, but I can't actually suss out what people's overall net positions are. So even if the market maker did want to do this sort of thing where it's like, I'm going to go and take out one side of the market because there's a lot of people that are long and I can just make it go up there and stop them out. If there was a way to know, then you would just do something different. You need to play it like chess, not order flow? Well, no, I don't think... Yeah, well, I guess the thing I'm saying is that when you kind of try and game theory out these sorts of things, it always just converges on a draw. Like, it's just not... It just doesn't work that way because it's competitive. Like, if I know... It's like... If you go and you play League of Legends, heaven forbid, I hope that's not any of you, but it's just probably the most popular game and it's a good example. And Ashe, the ADC is, what do they call them? You know, your kind of kill person that you all stack. That's like the top hero right now. So what do? You go in and you say, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be Ashe, because she's the best hero right now. So what's everybody else going to do? Well, the other team is probably also going to pick Ashe, and then everybody else on the team are going to pick heroes that do good against Ashe. And so now all of the sudden, doesn't really actually help you that you pick Ashe, because everybody is playing against that, right? So this kind of like meta game theory sort of a thing does not end up creating an edge for you. If the market tends to do a certain thing, everybody knows it and reacts accordingly, and so it doesn't help you. So you don't want to play it like you don't want to play that kind of game. The kind of game that you actually want to play is war. Think of it like war. Okay? How do you approach a war? There's a front line. I need to find a place where I have an informational advantage on them, right? I'm going to attack here. I have to convince them that I'm actually going to attack here. I need to have intelligence to know that they're buying it. You know? That's kind of the approach that you got to take. Which really means, like, I know which way it's going to go, and I know that the other people don't. So I can kind of sneak in an order in here. I do it in a way that they can't really see it, can't really tell what's going on. And then by the time it's really going and they realize that's what it's doing, they all pile in. They kind of, stumble on each other, and you get out on their liquidity. That's how that game is played. That's how I go about doing it. And I think of it as an information war. I want to go and find information that other people don't have, and only trade in a situation where I know what's gonna happen. Obviously, there's always a risk. If you're in military and you're going to go in and invade the beach or whatever it is, okay, there's a certain risk. There's a certain chance that it's not going to go well for you, right? But you don't waste soldiers and people's lives and so on and so forth unless you think there's a very good chance that your operation is going to be successful. Or you have to. You have no other choice, but right? And that's the way that we play it. I'm not going to put my capital at risk unless I think because of the situation that I have an advantage. Does that make sense? Still with me? I know they're starting to test some of the downside areas here. I find it really interesting that like the low in ZB 119.04 kind of corresponds exactly to my position from yesterday. But another thing, chess is mostly memorization these days, so like the way that you learn chess is you go through, there's all of the different openings, and here's the way that these play out, and here's why they play out, and so there's like all of this theory behind it, but you're memorizing like the most basic kinds of setups. Makes sense. I was thinking about cause and effect. Well, now this is different, right? Because if you are going to be the cause, then it's a different game, right? I'm going to buy 50,000 contracts. My buying is going to affect the market. So how do I change how I go about placing those 50,000 contracts to the best of what is most optimal for me, right? That's a different game. So Well, what do we know? We know that if I buy a lot of a thing, it will move it up. If I sell a lot of a thing, it will move it down. And I want my average position on this thing to be as low as possible, right? Because I'm gonna buy tons of it here, and then after me, it needs to continue moving up, right? Like I only move it so far, and then after that, there's like my average position. I need the instrument to continue going my direction. So how do I deal with that? Well, the first thing is I need my cost basis to be as low as possible, right? I need my cost basis to be as low as possible. So the first thing is if I can do it in a situation where a lot of people are already selling, then perfect, right? I need to go long. I need to go long because it's a long hedge, okay? They're selling right now. Tons of people are selling. Perfect. Iceberg right there. I'm filled all at one price. Done. Got a good price on the day. Doesn't really, it's a hedge. So I don't necessarily care which way it goes. But what I do care about is that I got filled as efficiently as possible. And since people were selling into me, that's great. Okay. Maybe it's kind of like more of a neutral market, right? If I just come in and like start hitting it, and I trade all 50,000 contracts all at once, well, then this is going to move up. And people are like, oh, something's going on. And they're going to all start buying it too. And then it's going to run away from you. So you don't want to do that, right? So here's the game that they do. And here's what they've kind of discovered works best is if you can create a liquidity hole you can actually fill a lot of volume from. It's kind of a funny counterintuitive thing because we're talking about an area where the resting liquidity is lower, where the latent liquidity is slightly lower. But when you look at the amount of liquidity that is available over a long time frame, you actually end up with more liquidity being available in that space in the long run. And you can create these holes. So what you do actually is you come in and you hit it, and everybody goes, oh, something's going on. And they all come up. And then all of the market makers go, oh, whoa, hold up. I don't want to hold any liquidity here. And so they start pulling. And then a bunch of volume starts trading there. And everybody has all these positions in that spot, right? And then that makes the liquidity hole because people don't want to put more liquidity up at that spot they already have inventory on, right? And then it stays there for like 40 minutes. And then during that 45 minutes, I'm just very passively, slow trickle, buying more contracts. So I wait 45 minutes, then the liquidity hole is kind of filled. You're not necessarily getting filled on your contracts anymore. Then you move it up again. And the net result is you get something like this. Right? If you're the cause, you can kind of play these games. Another thing that you can do, if I really want it to go, right? If I'm taking high risk, right? Sell a bunch of it first, and then turn around and buy even more than that after that. And that's where you can kind of get these really insane reversals, right? If you were a hedge fund or something like that, you might execute in that way. Sell a bunch of it first and then flip it. And you might do that where you already have a position where it's like, so I want it to go up. I might already have a bunch of inventory added on here. I aggressively really sell that stuff. I aggressively really buy it up. And yeah, I'm going to lose money on that overall. Like this takes money to do those transactions and everything, but hopefully it ends up moving up more. You can kind of play games like that. Of course, once you're done with this, if you just immediately sell it, then it's going to do this. So you can't do that, right? You're going to have to wait for somebody else to push it up again. And then you can take your profit, right? And then you made this. Those are the games they're playing with you. So if you know that it's going to happen, you know that because of the economic news that was released, or because of the the key 200-day moving average that we're at, or whatever the situation is, that there are all of these funds with rules that they have to do X. And I know roughly how much volume is going to come through, and there are some situations where we can do that. Then I can come down and I can say, okay, so these guys are going to buy 30,000 contracts. Or like on the CPI, it was like, well, it fell 30,000, but they're going to sell 30,000 more. How are they going to go about doing that? Well, they're going to hope that all of these people are taking profits and they can sell against those. And you can kind of predict how they're going to want to execute it. And then you come over here and you look on the DOM and you say, okay, this is how I would execute it if I was buying right now. What is actually happening right now? And if what you're seeing happening at that moment is in line with the way that you think that they would execute it, now you have a trade. It's like, oh, well, there's still plenty of volume left. I can get short here and they're going to keep selling it, or whatever the deal is, right? That all implies that you know the cause, right? You can't necessarily look at what happened and know what future cause is going to be. You might be able to look at what happened and then after it happened, determine what the cause was. Some situations. But you can't look at what just happened and then know like what the next set of orders are going to be. Not on intraday timeframes. That doesn't work very well. There is momentum, but like you lose too much on those losers on an intraday timeframe. To really make money on momentum, you really have to hold it for days. So you just have to be informed. How do you hold the position for 30 minutes when the context has changed in seconds? Well, because I generally, you can generally tell, like, the way that it tends to go is it will move up for about 10 minutes and then it'll go sideways for 45 minutes and then it'll go up for 10 minutes. So what I will like to do is, oh, I saw this liquidity hole here. I want to get long right here and hope that second leg comes in, because I know why they're buying it and that there's likely to be a lot more volume that they have to fill and that there's going to be a second leg, right? That's the trade that I like to make. And so I might be sitting in there waiting for it to trend for about 30 minutes and then go, okay, it's probably done. And I usually don't stay in it longer than that. For day trades, at least. Well, I think that when you're talking about no BS day trading, like, it really does explain the game really well. But you notice that he's not saying like, when this happens, you tend to see this happen. All he's describing to you is the patterns that you know will happen, and once you really understand the way that the DOM works and what people are doing, you'll realize that those patterns are basically like just like the only possibilities, right? One possibility is that you have nothing on the bid, and then they go and attack it, and there's actually an iceberg. And then the other possibility is that there's nothing on the bid and they hit it and they trade through it. And those are, right? That's the lure and catching the edge. Which one is which? Well, can't really necessarily know. Unless you already know what the larger trend and the balance of flows is going to be. Once you know that sort of thing, then all of those little games kind of really help you kind of get a better position. But if you're at the front of the queue, then you can make money from those things, just from those things. But that's hard. So they've come to lows of the session. I'm seeing pretty decent amounts of volume getting taken out here, and there is a very, very consistent amount of selling here. So I don't think it was enough that I wanted to add a second contract. A little bit concerned that like tomorrow might be kind of a little iffy, and that might not be until next week that it would really make sense for me to add a second contract. But it is playing out in my favor still, so I think I can just sit on it with the one contract for now. I suppose, though, that it totally would have been great for me to like sell at 15. I don't know. I get into this thing where it's like, am I being too hands off? And then I'm like, oh, now I'm trading too much. I kind of feel like today that I erred on the side of not trading enough and could have done better. Could have scalped this or something and made a little bit baiting this move. Oops. Yeah, I really do kind of feel like I could have baited it. It's funny, I was like, oh, well, there's a couple of political things that we got to talk about today. And then I wanted to get into this other stuff, but spent so much time that didn't really get the time to come into the other stuff. Well, we can mess with around with it tomorrow, I guess. To recuperate your losses? I guess you could say that. So there was a point where I'd only had 100, right? And then now it's come back to 50. It really is kind of like when you think about it, there's if I had gotten filled up here, like the chances of me holding it all the way back down to the bottom are like practically nil, right? I don't know if I would call it recuperating my losses. I've made back some of my profits. Would we call it that? No, so the thing that I was trying to look at was what would be like the best watch list for me for stocks. So I'm kind of want certain metrics to be able to show up, and I'm not really finding a platform. I found platforms that have the metrics, but then like Financial Modeling it has the metrics, but does it let me make a watch list like this? No, they want me to add chips, which I have to spend money to do. That's freaking lame. I see. So the way that you make money is actually from me trading sim or something. That really turns me off of that website. When initiating a position, do you mostly use limit or markets? I would say that I very much prefer to use a market order, yes. Like, I want to contribute to the market orders that are pushing it. I want to maximize my impact. I want to use a market order. So I'll try and take a market order as she goes most of the time. I'll get in on a limit order if I see an iceberg that's really favorable to me, or I just am really confident that I'm going to get filled at that price, right? I wonder if Simfin allows me to just have a watch list. How long did it take you? My whole life. Whole life. I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily consider myself profitable. But remember that I don't like the term profitable in general. And if I was to put like what would be a qualifications for what we should call profitable, it would be like 5 years. So I've been doing this for like 6 years now. I would say that I didn't really feel like I really had it figured out until like 2021. So it's only been about 3 years doing it this way. And then I switched instruments, so that was a change, right? And then I had like 9 months of like really good trading, then a year and a half treading water, and then in January I kind of like didn't do very well. I didn't blow the account. I'm still going, I guess you could say, but I lost most of the profits that I had made. So I lost all of the profits I had made. So like, is that really profitable? There's lots of people out there that going through that whole thing would call themselves a profitable trader at some point during all of that, but not me. What I'm after is a 5-year history. So I don't think that 5-year history is going to come from day trading. I think that I learned from day trading and it's an important part of it, but that probably for me to meet my goals, that it's going to need to scale to swing trading, which is why I'm holding on to this swing from yesterday, and I think I'm going to try and hold it over the weekend, and maybe even hold it for several weeks. Who knows? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this one does allow me to make a portfolio of some sort. I can say I have Microsoft. Okay. Oh, cool. But then do I get to change this a little bit down here and say I can sort. I want to change which ones are on there. Doesn't let me do that. There's visualizations. That's cool. What about in settings? Nothing. Just like your name and email and password. That's it. So that's not really a very good watch list for me, is it? I can't find any crypto DOM trading course, and it's a big problem. Well, you know what? That's okay. I would not recommend day trading crypto. That's really all there is to it, right? I think it's kind of funny because the book can be really effective in crypto, but I would not recommend day trading crypto. So in the end, the advantage that you can get on the DOM doesn't make up for the disadvantage that you have when it just like it has a bender move against you. It's kind of funny. The places that have APIs tend not to have the other tools. There was one that had it. Oh, was it Tingo? Tingo had it, but then their interface was super limited. And I was like, no, this doesn't have anything. There was an app. Take it as an omen in trade treasuries. I think that the thing that really matters is like, what's your total net return? Like, when you die, okay, what did you make and lose from it? Right? You can't just look at, I mean, like, I'm almost 40, okay? I'm likely to live till 80 years old. That's like a whole 40 more years, right? Don't you think that it's a little silly to look at how did I do trading micro treasury yield futures last year compared to like, what am I going to do in the next 40 years, right? Because I could turn around and start a hedge fund and become a billionaire in 5 years. That's a possibility. I don't know how I would pull that off, but like it's within the realm of possibilities, right? And it would just make any of the other stuff that you'd done before that, scalping and stuff, irrelevant, right? And like that's the crazy thing to me is that, as far as I can tell, all of the stories that we hear and read about people becoming famous traders and stuff are all people that were swing trading, you know? So this one, Tingo, it has like a portfolio that you can build and everything, but then like I can't change anything about it. There should be a little, so here's an edit your news feed. That's pretty lame. Statistics. Oh, that's interesting. Scenario. Data. Correlation. Stock correlation. Oh. World. So when I go to portfolio, then I get all of these things. How to play. Oh, and then you can add a game. That's cool, I guess. But it's built for games. I don't know if I just want to see stocks and like at what all of their key metrics are at that time. Pricing. Oh, that one costs money. And then the API. That one doesn't really have it. Bingo, Alpha Advantage, no. Wise Sheets is basically for spreadsheets, so that one kind of works, but old age is, after all, punishment for having lived. Okay. I do not feel punished by old age yet. Well, you know what? It's time for me to get going, guys. I spent a little bit too much time on the political stuff, saying the same thing over and over again. I got to get better at that. Not like better at that, like, I shouldn't talk about politics as much, but I think that I can make politics more entertaining for you. But it sounds like you guys enjoyed talking about it and maybe you learned something about it. And understand the situation a little bit more. I don't know why it was today that we decided to talk about it again, but the Ukraine war has been a thing for a while, right? Well, we'll see. I think tomorrow we should have a little bit more time to mess around with some stuff. So yeah, love the conversation. Oh, I'm glad. So it's going to be just me this weekend because it's President's Day on Monday. So the wife and the kids are going to go and do something, but I don't get Monday off. So, you know, I will have free time, the likes of which I have not had in quite some time. And I'm not studying for a test right now, so I can actually like work. I'm seriously considering just going to what is it called? Norgate. Just getting futures data from Norgate, you know? And starting something there. Starting the beginning of our swing trading strategy, because I know a decent amount about swing trading strategies. I don't know a whole lot about what would be the best strategy for valuing stocks to trade off of it. So, but I do want to get something up for keeping track of my stocks because I want to start spending more time looking at that. Right? Okay, guys, I gotta get going. I will see you tomorrow. So come with some ideas. If there's anything you want to, like, technically you want to get into, we can spend some time on that stuff tomorrow, right? Figuring things out. Anyways, in the meantime, stay excellent.